Hello everybody and welcome to another video. And today's video should come as no surprise since a couple of weeks ago, maybe a week ago, I covered the latest Hypocrisy track, which was Chemical Whore, coming off their new upcoming album Worship, which comes out November 26th. So an album that I'm very much looking forward to. I mentioned at the time when I made the video that I've been a long time fan of Hypocrisy. I've always enjoyed their music, and it's been a long time since they actually released any new material. I think it was something like 8 years, can't remember, but it's been quite some time since they last released an album. So when I heard that they were releasing this new album, I was really excited for it. So, you know, I covered that track Chemical Whore, and of course a couple of days ago they released a new track, Dead World. So that's what we're going to be looking at today, because, well, I love this band and I want to hear more of the stuff. So yeah, that's what we're doing. I do have lyrics here. They come from directly under the video, so in theory they should be 100% accurate, but, you know, sometimes they might be a little bit off. We'll see. So, yeah, let's jump into this and see what we've got. So, Dead World by Hypocrisy. Let's have a look. And there we go. Dead World by Hypocrisy. Now that's quite different to the last track that we looked at when we looked at Chemical Whore. It was very, very different compared to this track. But the thing is, this is the odd one out. This track is the odd one out. Because when I spoke about Chemical Whore, I mentioned it had a very distinctive sound. You know, as Hypocrisy do, the band as a whole have a very distinctive sound. You can always tell that it's Hypocrisy because there's a certain guitar tone they use. There's a certain way they play. It's very, very recognisable. This one, however, I would never have guessed. If you'd played me this track and didn't tell me the band, I would never have been able to guess who it was because it doesn't have that distinctive Hypocrisy sound to it. That's quite interesting. Even the actual way he delivers the vocals in this track are quite different from how he normally does. So, yeah, I mean, he does the higher pitched sort of screamed vocals, which may give it away because, again, Pete Tagrin's got a very distinctive type of voice when he does his vocals. He's got a very noticeable style. But overall, the delivery of the vocals in this is quite different. The actual music itself is quite different. And, I mean, it was hard, it was fast, and it was brutal. I mean, the drums in that were insane. It sounded brilliant, and I really, really like the track. It's very, very different from what you normally expect to hear from Hypocrisy. This is very reminiscent of their very early stuff. Like, if you listen to the Osculum Obstinum album, it's very different from, say, Virus or Abducted and things like that. You know, there's quite a distinctive difference, and this actually reminds me of their much older material. So, there's that. Now, Hypocrisy did sort of... They started off as one of your sort of regular death metal bands that were singing about regular death metal subject, but then they sort of skewed off and they went into sort of paranormal, UFO, alien life form sort of things, which they did for many, many, many albums. This album seems to have changed direction, because of the two tracks I've heard so far, there's not been any sort of mention of aliens or UFOs or anything like that, like there have been in previous albums. This one seems to be talking about corruption in the world. Because Chemical Whore was obviously talking about these pharmaceutical companies that just fill you full of drugs, you know, making you reliant upon their product and then charging you ridiculous amounts for them. And this track seems to be talking about just a corrupt government in general. And, you know, the video showing a sort of zombie apocalypse type of event, you know, and that could just be, like, you know, there's this one woman fighting against all of the zombies, so it's the one person trying to break out of, you know, the bull that we're fed that turns us into mindless zombies that makes us go along with whatever the government wants. That could be what that represents. But the actual song itself does seem to be talking about corrupted governments. And it goes, they have a master plan, divide us all, make us suffer. Terminate the human whore, we'll drop like flies, we're the lab rats. So they have the master plan to divide us all and make us suffer, which is what the government seem to do. You know, they want to try and make us sort of butt heads with each other so they can get away with whatever the hell they want. You know, they're like creating one hell of a stir, and then they'll cause something else to sort of make us, to take our attention off what they're doing. Kind of like at the moment, I mean, in the UK, at the moment, there's a massive fuel shortage. And this has magically sprung up just, you know, a week or two after the government announced that they're going to start increasing taxes on lower income families to try and pay for the NHS. Now, our bloviating buffoon of a prime minister swore before he came into office that he was going to be pumping 3.8 million a year into the NHS to keep it afloat. He promised he'd be doing that. But now there's been talks of the fact that he's trying to sell off the NHS, which he promised he wouldn't do. And now, in order to pay for the NHS, he's going to start taxing low-income families rather than him and his rich mates. Because, you know, because they're rich, they don't deserve to be taxed. They don't need to pay tax on earning all that money, yet we have to be taxed for all the small amount of money that we work really, really hard for and are struggling to keep our families, surviving with. So as soon as this subject comes up, conveniently, the government mentions, oh, by the way, there's a fuel shortage, which by all logical reason there actually isn't. So now all of the general public are panic buying, going out, rushing to the fuel pumps, and they are now causing a fuel shortage. And he's causing mass hysteria in the public, making the public sort of fight against each other, now arguing over who gets fuel and who doesn't. So he can go off and do whatever he wants to do with the NHS and his raising of taxes and stuff like that. That's basically what the opening lines of this song are. They have a master plan to divide us all and make us suffer. That's exactly what they do. You hate me, I hate you. They're feeding off our hatred. They're feeding off our anger. They push me, they push you. They push us in the corner and wait for us to explode. I see the dead world with their evil minds and evil plans. I see the world dead with bleeding fits and triggered hate, the slaughter of the damned. Will we ever stand our ground, or will we lay down and wait to die? With poison in our veins, chemtrails as far as the eye can see, we'll drop like flies with this Hunger Games. So again, they're talking about like these conspiracy theorists, all these people that believe chemtrails are a real thing, and he's saying, will we ever stand our ground, or are we just going to lay down and let this sort of thing happen? Are we going to allow these corrupt asshats get away with this? They're busy buying their third holiday home in the Bahamas, counting all their money with all their rich 1%er friends, whilst we're essentially fighting each other because they've caused trouble. Are we ever going to actually stand up and go, do you know what? We're not going to deal with this. We need to take these people to task, and actually have a decent, honest government, which I don't think even exists. Honest government is an oxymoron. Like the word fun run, it doesn't make sense. And he's saying, if we don't stand up, we're going to drop like flies. We're going to end up killing each other like the Hunger Games. There is no justice, there is no truth of what they're saying and what they will do. Don't we know that? With aluminium in our veins, yes, aluminium, the proper way to say it. Even Swedish people know how to say aluminium properly, not aluminum. In our veins, we will drop dead soon. Governments around the world is about to succeed with their evil plan, exterminating humans. See how we run. See how we suffer, turning us against each other. The world is dead with their evil minds and evil plans. I see the world dead with bleeding fits and triggered hate, the slaughter of the damned. The earth is cracking into pieces. We are the global experiment. The hate is driving us mad. It's the slaughter of the damned. So, he's basically talking about the way the governments manipulate us, the way they sort of try and divert attention from real big problems by creating so many more smaller problems that will turn us against each other rather than turning us against them. Which is what we really should be doing. We should be turning on the governments and taking them to task and saying, look, you promised to do this, that and the other for the country. You're a lying piece of shit. You deserve to be strung up by your nutsack and beaten. Because that's all these people are, They're just fat, rich bastards who want to grow fatter and richer off the poor people of the world. They say they want to help the poor, but they don't. They want to take all the money they possibly can off the poor people to make themselves even more richer. Even more richer. That was terrible. They want to make themselves richer whilst they watch the poor get poorer. They don't care about us. They don't care about making the world a better place for everybody. All they care about is making the world a better place for themselves. They're selfish, arrogant, stuck-up pieces of who deserve to be taken to task and beaten. And it really me off that there are people who turn around and go, like, XYZ is going to be good for our country. XYZ is going to be good for the government. And then, a couple of months later, they do the exact opposite thing of what the governments turn around and do the exact opposite of what they said. But these stupid, mindless idiots are so stuck in their ways. They're like, yeah, he screwed us over, but I still believe in him. I still think he's right, despite the fact that he's bending us over and us up the arse with a razor-laced dildo. You know, oh, me off. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about the song. But no, I mean, so, you know, this is quite a different direction for Hypocrisy. Like I said, for the most part, they've been talking about aliens, abduction, UFOs, paranormal sort of activity sort of thing. So for them to take this sort of turn and go into how corrupt the world is at the moment, and this is a sort of common theme amongst a lot of metal bands. A lot of death metal bands have been doing it for years. So, you know, it's interesting to see them take this diversion, but, you know, they've always been talking about sort of conspiracies and things like that, you know, like talking about Area 51 and stuff like that. So it's not too far of a diversion from what they usually do. But yeah, this track is very, very different from what we normally expect to hear from Hypocrisy as well. So I like it. I really can't wait for this album. The new album, Worship, out November 26th. There are going to be links below to where you can pre-order that if you haven't already, and if you want to. But yeah, I liked it. Good piece of music. Really hard, really fast, really heavy, really good. Loved it. But I don't know what else I can say about that, so I'll leave that as it is. And if anybody would like to make a suggestion for a track for me to react to, then please do so. By all means, you can drop a comment in the comment section below, or message me on my Facebook or my Instagram. Or you can even message me through my Patreon, where you can also help to support this channel, which would of course be a massive help to me, since every piece of content I upload to this channel gets demonetized the instant it hits the internet, which is a little bit frustrating, but you know, it is what it is. I am using copyrighted material, so in certain aspects I can understand and respect that, but you know, still kind of annoying considering the amount of effort I put in. There is a option in Patreon where you can get your suggestion jumped to the front of the queue if you should so desire it. There's a limit on how frequently you can do that, and that's just to be fair to people who suggest tracks through more regular means such as YouTube, Facebook and Instagram comments. And if you do suggest a track through regular means, do know it could take me a while to get around to your suggestions, since I do get suggested so many new tracks every single day that my list grows faster than I can record the videos. But I do write down every suggestion I get, so it should get done eventually. It might take me a while to get around to it, but, you know, it should get done. Also, MetalHead Reacts is a proud supporter of the Sophie Lancaster Foundation, a British-based charity whose goal is to put an end to hate crimes, and one of the main facets of that is hate crimes against people of the alternative community, and that's something I believe in very, very strongly, and it's something that gets very widely ignored and sort of brushed under the carpet and treated as not a big deal. But the problem is, it is a big deal. It's a very big deal. It's been going on for decades, where people from the alternative community have been getting violently and brutally assaulted over something as trivial as their taste in music and the clothes that they wear. And you know, we're not just talking about like insults being shouted or getting a shoulder ram as you walk down the street. We're talking about real violent crimes where people are getting brutally assaulted and getting hospitalized, sometimes with broken limbs and sometimes even more life-threatening injuries, over something as ridiculous as their taste in music. You know, this is nothing new, but no one ever speaks about it. The last time there was widespread conversation about this in the media was 14 years ago, when Sophie Lancaster and her boyfriend Rob Maltby were violently and brutally assaulted by a group of 5 or 6 people who beat them, punched them, knocked them to the ground and stamped on their heads so violently that they both ended up in comas. Now, Rob Maltby, he did thankfully survive the assault. He was in a coma for around about a week and a half, maybe a little bit longer, but he did thankfully survive. Sophie Lancaster, on the other hand, she was in a coma for 13 days before she succumbed to her injuries and she died. This young woman was 20 years old and was beaten to death by a group of people just purely because she listened to alternative music and wore alternative clothing. Now, when this happened, it was all over the news, as rightfully it should have been. But, you know, over time, other news stories came in and it disappeared into the background, which is to be expected. But in the 14 years since that happened, we've not heard a single other news story like it. Yet there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of similar incidents in that time, and nothing has been said. And the main differentiating factor here, differentiating factor, is the fact that in the incidents that have happened in that time, no one's died. No one has lost their life in that time. which is thankfully a good thing. But that is also the most messed up thing of all. They won't speak about this subject unless someone dies. You know, they spoke about Sophie Lancaster's incident because she died. In the 14 years since that happened, there have been thousands of incidents. No one's died, not one word. You know, a couple of years ago, a young woman in Glasgow, and again, a 21-year-old woman, was assaulted twice on the same night, again by a group of 5 or 6 people who beat her, kicked her, punched her, knocked her to the ground, and violently and brutally beat her more. And this happened twice on the same night to the same woman. This wasn't in the news. This wasn't all over the papers. This wasn't all over social media. This wasn't all over the internet. Nothing was said. Now, if this had been religiously motivated, if this had been homophobically motivated, if this had been, you know, racial, religion, disability, whatever, this would have been all over the news. But nothing was said. Because this was a young woman from the alternative community who was violently and brutally assaulted, not one word. You know, every single day in the media we hear about these entitled white women who are calling the police because a family of colour are having a picnic in a public space, or an Asian person is walking down their home street. You know, and yes, racism is vile, it is bad, it is horrendous, and it is at a fucking all-time high at the moment, and it's beyond ridiculous. But these are tiny little issues compared to someone getting beaten to within an inch of their life. You know, yes, they're bad things, but someone getting beaten half to death just because they have a different taste in music, I think that, you know, that's got a bit more of a priority going on for it. But nothing gets said, and it is disgusting. But you can guarantee, if that young woman had died as a result of the assault, then it would have been all over the news. Then people would have been weeping and crying, saying what a tragedy it is. How can this sort of thing happen in this day and age? Oh, what a horrible world we live in. But that's just it. They only want to speak about it and talk about it like that when a tragedy occurs. They want to seem empathetic to the problem. But when this problem is in their face, day in, day out, they just don't care. They don't want to talk about it. You know, if no one's died, they don't care. You know, they can't show people how caring and loving they are. If you know, if nothing tragic happens, how are people going to see how loving and caring and how in tune with the world they are? But as soon as a massive tragedy happens, then they're suddenly like this loving, caring person, and it's disgusting. By ignoring this sort of thing happening, we're letting the people committing these crimes think that they can get away with it. We shouldn't have to wait for someone to lose their life before something gets done. We shouldn't have to wait for someone to die before something gets said, before we talk about this. And this is what the Sophie Lancaster Foundation is all about. They want to start a conversation about this. They want more people to realise how big of a problem this really is. Because Sophie Lancaster isn't the first person to lose their life over this subject. She's not the first. And if we carry on ignoring it, she won't be the last. You know, they don't want to see another family go through what they went through when they had to watch their daughter slowly die over the course of 2 weeks. Just because of the small-minded actions of a group of people who couldn't handle the fact that not everybody likes the same thing, and that, you know, everybody has their right to be an individual. And they do. Everybody has the right to be whoever they want to be, within legal boundaries, of course. Just because someone listens to alternative music doesn't mean they're not qualified to receive justice. Something needs to be done. Something needs to be said, and it needs to be done soon, before what happened to Sophie Lancaster happens again. So if you'd like to find out more about the Sophie Lancaster Foundation, there's a link to their website in the description below. You can go over there, find out what they're working on at the moment, find out what their overall goal is, because they can explain it a lot better than I can. And if you can help them out in any small way, obviously don't feel obligated to do so, but if you can help them out in any small way, whether it's a small donation through their website or something as simple as one of these, Sophie wristbands, maybe even that one, they've got a whole bunch of other really cool stuff going on in their web store, but the smallest amount can make the biggest difference. And the sooner we get more people talking about this, the sooner we make people more aware of how big a problem this really is, the sooner we can help to stamp out prejudice, hatred, and intolerance everywhere. But I'm going to leave that as it is for the time being. Thank you all very, very much for watching. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
I'll see the world dead, with their evil minds and evil plans. I'll see the world dead.